Hey, this week we are continuing our journey toward Easter, and that is a journey, and it should be a journey to move toward Easter, to that celebration. As I said yesterday, I think too many times we want to rush by the cross to get to Easter, but you cannot get to Easter without the cross. And we must go to the cross. We must see what's taking place there, the horror of it, that which just sends chills in us when we think of it. But we are to go there to see the horror of it, to see the darkness of it, the evil, the wickedness of it, and to see sin, God's wrath poured out on sin in the flesh of Jesus Christ. Not upon Jesus, but in the flesh. God is not angry with Jesus. Jesus is taking our place. It's not that God is angry with anyone. He is angry at the corruption that has come into his good creation, and he's trying to rescue. He is rescuing that creation through Jesus Christ. And as we look at that, and we continue through it, yesterday we got up to the pressing into service of Simon of Cyrene. We looked at the flagellation of Jesus, which primarily, and carrying the crossbeam, and he was not able to do that. Today, we're at the place, Golgotha, or some people, Golgotha. Actually, it is, however you pronounce that, it's a Greek transliteration of an Aramaic word, Golgotha, which means place of a skull place, you could translate it. And so we picked that up in Mark 15, verses 22 through 26 is what we're doing today. Then they brought him to the place Golgotha, which is translated place of a skull or skull place. And they tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided up his garments among themselves, casting lots for them to decide what each man should take. It was the third hour when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." Three things I want to bring out. First of all is the place. It simply says the place, it's translated place of a skull, because that's an Aramaic word. It would say a skull place. Now, does it mean that it looked like a skull, as some take it, or does it mean that this is a place of execution? So, like we would put skull and crossbones on a poison and say, "Stay away, deadly, death." That's what that symbolizes, which, the pirate flag with the skull and crossbones represents death. Deadly, death, that kind of thing. Is that what it means? It is more than likely the crucifixion place. There is a church over what is more than likely the actual crucifixion place of Jesus. You can't actually see that. And that's the thing with so many places in the Holy Land. There's a church built over it, so you can't really see it. That's like the place of the tomb where Jesus was buried. There's a church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You can't see anything. So they take you to the garden tomb. It sort of looks like what a garden tomb would have looked like, that Jesus would have been entombed in. And so that's sort of the case. So the question, you have Gordon's Calvary, and I've seen that, and yeah, you can see like there's two eyes. Is that what it meant, though? Did it mean that it looked like a skull, or does it mean that it's a place of execution? The skull place is what it says, a death place. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Pretty sure Gordon's Calvary is not where he was crucified. That is somewhere else, but it's still neat to look at. It's still cool to be there, to think about that, and to go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and look there. You'd be standing in line for a while and all of that, but it's still pretty neat to breathe that air and to walk that ground and to imagine, because you still have Jerusalem, you still have the Kidron Valley, you still have the Mount of Olives that you can, it's still there. It's still there. All of that is still there, and the Mount Nebo and other places you can visit. I digress. Let me get back to what I'm talking about. So regardless, it is interesting that it either looked like a skull, or it is said as a skull place. It is a place of death, where the Romans executed people. And it's an interesting statement here following in verse 23. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. Who tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh? Which Mark doesn't go into any explanation about that. The fact is that wine mixed with myrrh and gall as Josephus tells us and as the Talmud tells us. The wealthy women, Jewish women, would try to dull the pain, excruciating pain of crucifixion by offering this drink to those who were being crucified. And they paid for it themselves. It came out of their own pocketbook. They did this. Why did they do that? Well, because they took Solomon's writings in Proverbs 31, 6 and 7 quite literally. It says this, "Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to him whose life is bitter. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his trouble no more." So these ladies, in an errand of mercy, would try to, and let's face it, in Palestine, it's going to be Jewish people that are in the province of Judea. It's going to be Jewish people that are getting crucified. And so these wealthy ladies would seek to dull the pain. And myrrh was known as a sort of a narcotic. It would dull the pain as a painkiller. It was known as a painkiller. And so it was used with myrrh and gall to sort of numb somebody out so that they wouldn't feel the pain. And it could produce sleep so that you would go unconscious and die sooner rather than later and not experience the full force of this. But interestingly, they were there and it was offered to them. Now, I don't know, and I can't find out, I don't know if the women themselves gave it to the people who were suffering or if the soldiers took it from them and gave it to them to make sure that it wasn't poison, or I don't know how that worked. I just know that according to Josephus and the Jerusalem Talmud or the Palestinian Talmud, that these women who were wealthy, that they did this, and it was seen as an act of mercy and kindness to do this for those who were being crucified. And of course, based on Proverbs 31, 6 and 7. And so they took that quite literally. Interestingly, however, Jesus refused to take it. He would not take this drug. And it's, why is that? Because he wanted, it is said, and I agree, that he refused to have his senses dulled, rather to feel the whole brunt of the wrath of God poured out on sin, and his being that vehicle of deliverance. That he experiencing all of that for us. He experienced every bit of it and drank that cup, the cup of wrath that he received. He drank it down to the dregs, which means he, in obedience to God's will, was determined that he would experience the whole thing for us. And aren't you glad that he did? We'll never have to experience hell because he experienced it for us. That separation, that agony, all of that he experienced for us. The physical, the emotional, the spiritual. And we'll get into that later on. But right now, to know that he experienced that for me, that he took that place for me so that I wouldn't experience the separation from God, separation from the love of God, separation from the mercy of God, in agony, physical torment, spiritual, emotionally, mentally, all of that experiencing. He did that for me so that I wouldn't. And that moves me to tears to think about that the Son of God would do that for me, who looked down the hallways of time and saw a boy that would be born named Rick, and that he would need salvation, and that is offered for me. So that's powerful to me. And so he refused to take it, and they crucified him. Well, that's short. How did they do that? Well, there was to everyone who was being crucified, there was an execution squad, 4 soldiers with a centurion over them. And they would be stationed, they would lead them to the place of execution, they would actually affix them to the cross, and then they would sit down and wait for this person to die, keep watch. That was their job. And so how would they do this? They had it down to a science. Jesus was not able to carry the crossbeam, and Simon of Cyrene carried it for him. There they would have stretched him out on that, and they would have driven spikes into his wrist, not the palms of the hands, but in the wrist, so that they would stay. Now, sometimes they would tie people to the cross. It was more pain was inflicted if spikes were driven, because it was excruciating pain, because there's a nerve right there. If you've heard of having carpal tunnel, that's that very nerve that is involved in that, and it pulls the thumbs down as that's done, just as is shown on the shroud imprint that is there. The thumbs are there and the nail prints in the wrist. Long before anyone, in paintings don't show that. Paintings show in the hand. So this was prior to that, after people had forgotten how people were crucified and how nails were done. After they were nailed to the crossbeam, then they were lifted up onto the piece that was upright, and their feet were affixed to the cross, one leg over the other, right over the left, and nailed through the heel, one spike through the heel. So 3 spikes, one through the heel, as we now know, or it could also be done through the feet, overlapping, so it's driven through the feet and the heel. That could be done. But the one body or bones that were recovered that do illustrate nailing by crucifixion, it was nailed through the heel, one spike through the heel, and it hit a knot in the olive tree, olive wood that was used for the cross, and bent, so it couldn't be removed. So he was buried with that. They just cut that piece of wood out, and he's buried with it, entombed with it, and his bones were in an ossuary box. And so we do know that they nailed through the feet. We do know they nailed through the heel, and so it could have gone through the foot into the heel. We know there was one spike was done for both, and so that would affix the feet to the cross. And then in order to breathe, one had to move up and down on the cross in order to inhale and exhale. So you had to raise up to inhale, and then that air, you couldn't exhale, so you had to raise up and exhale again and then take a breath and go down, because you couldn't stay up like that very long because you're putting pressure. A spike through your heels and through your wrist, pulling that nerve down, so every time you moved, and rough against your back that's already been beaten. And so that is what's going on. So they crucified him. Well, that's pretty weak language as far as I'm concerned, because, well, you got to forgive Mark and the other gospel writers, because this was so horrific. They didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that was talked about. Everybody understood what crucifixion was. Everybody knew the horror of it, the degradation of it. It's not just being killed, it's being degraded in the process. And what we'll see next is part of that degradation. It says, and they crucified him and divided up his garments among themselves, casting lots for them to decide what each man should take. And that's interesting because it fulfills Psalm 22, which really you ought to read Psalm 22 because that really talks about crucifixion from Messiah's perspective. But what that says in Psalm 22, verse 18, they divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. And if you read, and they pierced his hands and feet, that is there as well. If you read that, you see that it is coming from the perspective of the seed of David, the one who is the Messiah, the one who is crucified. David prophesies this thing is going to take place. But the other interesting thing is they stripped him of his clothing. They put his clothes on him to take him to the place, the skull place, but then they stripped those clothes off of him because people were crucified naked. That was part of the degradation of crucifixion. You were laid bare before all to see. And for a Jewish person, this was particularly horrible. To have your nakedness on display for everybody to see. And so it's really humiliating, it's really degrading, and not only is it the pain and the suffering that goes with it, but it's emotional, and it's not just physical, it's emotional, spiritual suffering, because this is horrible for a Jewish man to experience, or woman, to be naked in front of everybody. And it would bother me to be naked in front of everybody, so especially, but probably for different reasons. I think most people ought to keep their clothes on. Anyway, they divided up his garments among themselves, cast lots to decide what each man should take. And then the last thing I want us to look at is the inscription that was placed over his head, King of the Jews. We'll see later that, or in the gospel accounts, so that the Sanhedrin and the Sadducees, the chief priests, this is wrong, you need to take that down. Put on there, he claimed he was king of Israel, which is how the Jews would have put it. I mean, this is a derisive thing. What is he being crucified for? That's what the placard over the cross would state to everybody, so everyone would know. It was done in Latin, it was done in Greek, and it was done in Hebrew. So everyone would know, or Aramaic. So everyone would know why this person was being crucified. So why is Jesus being crucified? He's being crucified as an insurrectionist against Rome. And so what they're saying is, this guy claimed to be king. This is what happens if you try to make yourselves independent from Caesar, independent from Rome. Just remember who rules this place. And if you pursue this, this is what happens to you. We will crush you. So the crucifixion is not only an individual thing, it is a warning to the nation. We will crush you if you follow this guy. And what the Sadducees and chief priests are saying, hey, don't put that up there like that. He claimed this. We never said he was this. We're not following him, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of politics that's going back and forth in this that we don't really see. And I don't know that it's necessary to see it. It's interesting to see it. The main thing to see is that Jesus took our place, the innocent for the guilty. And you see that as he takes the place of Jesus Barabbas, son of the Father, who is guilty, and the innocent takes his place. And he refuses to have his eyes closed to it. He experiences all of it for our sake, so that all of it is experienced by him. This offering, this sacrifice that is being made, he experiences for you and for me. And because he is the King of the Jews, he is the King, he is the seed of David, that promised Messiah. He is the King of the Jews, the one who is promised, the one who is going to take away the sins, the one who's going to restore Israel, the one who is the blessings to the nations are going to come through. And we see that as we continue toward Easter and as we finish the cross. Well, listen, I pray that you have experienced his substitution for you. I pray that you have laid claim to the love of God in Christ Jesus, that you have said, yes, Lord, save me. I believe in you. I believe you've saved me from my sin and from death, and I'm trusting you completely to see me through. And if that's you, I rejoice with you. I pray that you know that. I pray that you know the love of God in Christ Jesus, because he really does love you. He loves you so much he gave his only begotten Son. You might have forgiveness of sin, eternal life, and yes, right here and right now, joy indescribable. I pray that that's yours. And listen, as we go through our journey to Easter, don't forget that we're having Easter celebration over at Obion County Central High School in the Commons area. That's going to be at 10 o'clock. The doors are going to open at 9:30, and I pray that you would join us there. It's an invitation to all the community to come and worship with us. We believe God has pushed us to open our worship service up to the whole community to come and celebrate Easter with us at Obion County Central, because we can't in our sanctuary. And so we were looking for a place to do, and God provided that for us. And the leadership at Obion County Central said, yes, absolutely, you can use that. And so we're looking forward to that, being a part of that. And so I'm excited to offer you that invitation. As I said, the worship service starts at 10 o'clock Easter Sunday, April 4th, and the doors will open at 9:30. We're having a wonderful time of greeting and donuts and other things, coffee, juice, milk for the kids, all that kind of thing. Color pages and colors for the kids to be involved in. We have a gift for everyone who's not a member of our church that we'd love to give you. And also, hopefully, I have a cross of olive wood that comes from the Holy Land that I can put in your hands to remember that Jesus died for you and he rose again for you. So we have all of this going on. We're having a special baptismal service afterwards. And if you want to be baptized, we're going to open that up to you. If you feel like you're called to be baptized or you're being led to be baptized, we're prepared. We're ready for you. We've got shirts and shorts. We want you to be baptized. We're going to be baptizing a bunch of people anyway. You come on, be a part of that baptismal service. We'd love to see you. Hey, listen, I love you more importantly God loves you, as I've expressed so many times. Please don't forget that. His love displayed in Christ Jesus. That's what we celebrate at this Easter season. Oh, how marvelous it is. And I so look forward to celebrating with you. God's blessings be upon you. Hey, listen, I'll see you tomorrow.